Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Miguel Rosso, and I'm pleased to be your moderator for today's session. Thank you as well, Your Excellency, for your remarks. There are many highlights that will certainly help to shape today's conversation. I'm excited to be here with fellow young leaders who are driving impact in so many ways. But first, I just want to quickly highlight why intergenerational allyship matters, and it's critical to build a better future for all. Last year, I had the chance to co-lead the Davos Lab with the Global Shapers community and the World Economic Forum to shape the world's first youth-driven recovery plan. It reached youth around the world, and there were a number of issues that were highlighted that showed what youth aspire for the future. And there were a few things that stood out that I think we could keep in mind as we're navigating today's conversation. First, before the pandemic, our world was already facing an intergenerational crisis, from climate change, inequality, geopolitical tensions, and fast-paced technological changes. These are all issues that we inherited, including today's youth. But many young people around the world understand that this is a critical time for humanity and that we're facing an existential crisis. Many of them are justifiably angry, not only because do they have to face a more unpredictable world, but they must also now contend with rising living costs, among other issues. But despite this, young people are stepping up in so many different ways, as we're going to see today, whether it's mobilizing, launching new initiatives, taking action within government institutions, the private sector, multilateral fora. The possibilities are endless. But leaders today must also take action by embracing intergenerational parity if we are to save the world as we know it. And with that said, it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today. So first we have Nisreen El Saim, a youth climate activist and climate negotiator who also serves as chair of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. Next we have Daniel Kleinman, founder and CEO of the Seaworthy Collective, a startup community and venture studio driving access and inclusion for the global ocean and climate startup ecosystem. And last but not least, Guillaume Lacroix, CEO and founder and co-founder of Brut, a growing French online media company targeted at young people and on the issues that matter to youth. So first, I would say let's get started with a rapid-fire question for all of you. Tell me, why is it critical that we enable next-gen leaders right now to protect our planet, and what's at stake? Nisreen, let's start.
Well, I think there is nothing more important than staying alive. And that's why it's very important to empower young people and young leaders now, not in the future, because we might not actually have a future. A lot of people say that this is climate anxiety and this is environmental anxiety, but sometimes anxiety is the reality. If we are not very much clear and honest and dedicated to the issue that we are working on, then we cannot proceed forward. Having tick points, having milestones, and tracking how much progress we are making is really important to stay in track and make sure that we will reach our goal, which is conserving humanity, nature, and of course, planet Earth.
Thank you. Daniel.
So I would say we are really at this point where we need a shift from exploitation, not just to sustainability, but regeneration, and Alexandre Cousteau touched on that earlier. In our lifetime, we literally are already at a point where sustainability for the oceans isn't practical. We need to think bigger. And as we look ahead at the economies of the future, it's really about valuing impact and finding ways that we can have opportunities to make an impact. And so when we think about the systems change and really the problems that we're solving, it's not just on the ground level of just solving plastic pollution or just solving carbon removal. It's really about how are we creating these economies of the future that are inclusive of the youth and of future ideas that we need to really see the systemic change to solve these problems at their root.
Yeah, if I look at it on a media perspective, and we reach 500 million young adults in the world every month, one of the biggest issues we can see is, like, as you mentioned, the most important thing is to survive. They know that. So there's massive awareness on those subjects. But the issue is, like, how do you close the gap between awareness and impact? And especially in a world where you have basically people over 50 watching TV, reading the press, hearing the radio, and young people being on social network. There's almost no overlap in media consumption. 2 years ago, it's 8% overlap between 50 plus and people under 30 years old. So it's critical to have young leaders because you need to close that gap. very, very importantly.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, you're all leaders in your own right, but tell me, how can leaders today be better allies for young people, and what would you like to see more from previous generations? Daniel, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, I think representation matters, and when I say representation, it's not just having people that don't not just look like me, but in general, people of youth in the building, but also not only with the opportunity, but really with the investment, right? I think we see a lot of PR in this space, but really it's the intentionality and people putting money where their mouth is and saying, we see the value of what youth are bringing to our economies and overall global development.
Excellent. Isreen?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to speak to each other. And this is like a message to all of the world leaders. Young people don't bite, so feel free to speak with us. But I think also it's a similar message to young people. You need to reach out to the decision makers in your country. You need to choose wisely who's going to actually speak on your behalf and make decisions for your future. We've been, for a long time, young people on the side. No, I don't want to say adults because young people are also adults, but maybe senior people in another side and decision makers. And this took us nowhere. I mean, we have to have a dialogue, we have to speak together, work together, and I'm sure we have, as young people, very innovative ideas. And of course, I'm sure that also decision makers have very legitimate challenges. And working together with our innovative idea, we can overcome these challenges so we can actually save the world or the planet.
Absolutely love what you two had to say. I mean, in terms of speaking to each other, so the value added of intergenerational allyship and innovative ideas. I mean, young people have such a good understanding of emerging trends as well, so all the more reason to engage in a meaningful way. Now, the way in which people, especially young people around the world, consume information nowadays has changed drastically over the past few years. Guillaume, you're leading a growing media organization that has adapted to these new realities. How have you made people listen, and are there any interesting takeaways from your work in this space?
I think the very basic is like you cannot be relevant to those generation if you are not, if you don't look like them. So most of the journalists and content creators we are working with are like 25 years old, 26 years old. First of all, you need to tell the story through the eyes of someone they can relate to. Because if you take someone who has like, talking points and was like a big talking heads, they won't relate to that. The other thing is there's an issue with education. I'm 47 years old. I grew up in a world where I'm not a Gen Z anymore. I grew up in a world where the offer in media was limited. We had like 3 or 4 TV channels, 3 or 4 media, radio and print, newspaper. Because of this, my generation, we have a common grammar of the world. Younger people know. You're 16, 18 today, you grew up with a phone in your hand, and every single content you've seen is made for you and distributed by an algorithm. Your best friend didn't see the same thing, your sister didn't see the same thing. So when you want to tackle those type of issue, not only it's overwhelming, but you don't have the tools and the common grammar to really understand what's happening on the generation level. So education is a big part of it, of course. And the second thing is, and we bear a massive responsibility as a media company. In a world which is polarized, how do you come up with a framework when people do act when they disagree? How do you do that? Because the world is super polarized, and especially through media. So how do you take action from there? How do you build a framework when it's not only leader and people following, but like you have like strong team members and people being able to have a common framework. Like, okay, we disagree. We do agree that where we're going is not good. We disagree on a lot of things under. So how can we, act together even if we disagree?
And that's an interesting insight. I mean, in some way, online spaces have provided a voice to so many more young people around the world, but it's also come with its own set of challenges, such as echo chambers and polarization. And glad to hear that you also mentioned the need to reimagine education so it's more adaptable to labor markets. Now, we're almost out of time here, but I just want to conclude with a question for all of you. How optimistic do you feel about the future? And is there one takeaway that you would like to leave us with, or a big idea that we could pursue in order to shape a more resilient and sustainable future? Nisreen, start with you.
Thank you. I think we don't have the privilege of not being optimistic. I mean, if we are not optimistic, then what? we cannot afford to go to the Bahamas and wait for the world to end. We have to stay optimistic and work, whether if it's actually moving now or it will build up to something that will at the end make a positive change. Again, we don't have any other option or solution but keep working and empowering not only ourselves but the communities around us, because sometimes, as they say, if you want to walk fast, you walk alone, but if you want to walk far, then we work together. We need to walk fast and far at the same time. So simply, we need to empower ourselves to walk fast and the communities around us to walk far.
I'd love to back up Nasreen's point, not to sugarcoat the reality that we're dealing with, right? It is a stark future, but at the same time, when we look ahead, it's really about systems change and what I see as radical collaboration. We understand that if we're going to solve these big problems of our time, it's time to put our egos aside and really just get to work together.
Once again, getting back to media, I think the technology is going to change a lot of things. When you look at the media landscape now, who's creating value? The publisher, the platform, maybe the creators, but not the audience. And actually, the people you are shining light on, who are young change maker, who can maybe do tens of millions of views because they're doing amazing thing to change the world, they get no value out of it. The only value they get is awareness. I really do think that through blockchain, we're going to be able to transfer that value to them. And so my organization, we're committed to this, and we're going to go there because I can really think, I think that we need to change some system. The media system is not made to really empower the audience and the people who are actually doing something. So I really do think that if we invest in blockchain, those things are going to change dramatically. We need to find a way to drive value to them, otherwise it won't work.
Thank you very much. So just to conclude, I think the question that brought us here in the first place on whether the next generation will save the world is a resounding yes, because we have no other choice.
Exactly.
But we have to work together through different generations. Many challenges, but also countless of opportunities to reimagine the world as well. Thank you very much, and please join me in thanking our panelists.